Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. And this time we're going to be looking at Ernst & Young's Global Fraud Survey. And I'm being joined by the Forensic Investigation and Dispute Services Leader of West Africa of Ernst & Young, Mr. Linus Okeke. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Well, this should be your 13th Global Fraud Survey. Now, what has been your experience doing this survey?
I think what we've done over the years, as you rightly mentioned, is that this is our 13th fraud survey. Okay, and every 2 years we organize this at a global level. But every other year we also do it at the regional level, i.e. Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And what we've seen, especially if you look at this year's survey, is that there seems to be what I would call the compliance fatigue amongst the corporate organizations.
When you talk about compliance fatigue, because I think that was what you captioned what do you mean by that?
Okay, what we notice is that whereas fraud risks are going up, whereas you have a lot of enforcement activities by regulators, companies don't seem to be doing enough to match the pace at which the law enforcement is moving. So that's why we captioned it compliance fatigue.
So from your findings, what could be the reasons why companies are not moving up to the pace?
I think one is that you can attribute that to the fact that companies are coming out of the recent economic downturn. And what we've also seen, looking at the fraud, the survey results, is that many companies believe that it is acceptable to do a couple of unethical things for you to survive the economic downturn. And that being the case, what we also found is that those things that ordinarily you will expect companies to do to manage their fraud risk are not being done. The survey we conducted, we spoke to 2,719 C-suite executives, i.e. chief executive officers, CFOs, and co. And many of them are of the view, for instance, that look, I don't need to attend the fraud awareness training. I don't need to attend the bribery and corruption training.
Is it that they know it, or that they know all it takes to checkmate those things?
From our own experience of being involved in investigations, I think the answer would be no. Okay, but at times it may be, okay, look, I know what fraud is all about, but the truth of the matter is that many people really don't know what fraud is all about. Many people really don't know what corruption is all about. Many things that those of us who are in the business of investigating fraud will consider to be fraudulent or to be corrupt. Many people don't see them as corrupt, as being corruption, yeah.
All right. Looking back home here in Nigeria, what is it like? What were your findings? Let's situate it here in Nigeria. I know we'll talk a lot about corruption. So tell me, now you have your data, you have your facts. So what is it like here in Nigeria?
I think the first point that needs to be made is that Nigeria was one of the 59 countries we covered in the survey. And the results, to me as a person involved in the fraud business, quote and unquote, okay, the results are not surprising. But some of the statistics are also troubling. In 2012, when we did this survey, 72% of the respondents from Nigeria perceived bribery and corruption to be serious. Okay? But this time around, the figure went up to 88%.
In that case, it's increasing.
And I can tell you that of all the 59 countries that were covered in the survey, Nigeria ranked second in terms of the perception. We only came behind Egypt. Egypt, 100% of the respondents believe that bribery and corruption was a big issue in their own country. But in the case of Nigeria, 88%, which is in a way consistent with the perception that Nigeria has had in the international community as being a high-risk country when it comes to bribery and corruption. But this time around, it is Nigerians themselves who are in business saying that bribery and corruption is a big issue.
Now, what are the areas? Where are we getting this? All these issues? Is it from the executives or from those under them?
Okay, I think it cuts across the entire organization because, of course, the board is saddled with the responsibility of managing the company, but we and I know that the board delegates authority to senior management. Senior management delegates to management and down the line. But what you also find is that the tone at the top, the way I look at it is the tone at the top drives the tone at the middle and the tone at the bottom. So if the MD, for instance, or the senior management is telling people, I don't care how you achieve results, just achieve
All
results.
I want is
that
the
will,
results.
of course, that will also flow down. What you then find is that many companies will end up declaring fantastic results. People are happy that results are achieved, but people don't pay attention to how those results are achieved. What you then find at the end of the day is that if there's an incident that gets out in the public domain and law enforcement gets involved, what happens at the end of the day is that fines are paid and a lot of implications will also follow. The money, like if you look at the US, for instance, when they want to sanction, first of all, they find out how much you made as a result of the corrupt activities. You have to forfeit that before they impose their sanction by way of fine. And those fines are very, very significant. And if you look at the top 10 fines that the US has imposed with respect to the law called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, out of the top 10 fines, Nigeria was involved in 6 of them. And you and I know that if a person scores 60% in an exam, that is a good result.
Well, now, this corrupt practices or this survey, does it just cover executives in the private sector, or it also involves those of them on the government level, the public sector?
All the respondents are from the private sector.
Okay.
Cutting across oil and gas, financial services, telecommunications, professional services firms, okay, and IT.
So what happens to those of them in the public sector?
Well, I think the focus for this particular survey was to look at the private sector, okay? And that's why we just zeroed in on the private sector this time around. But again, as you and I know, in Nigeria in particular, there's this perception that the public sector is corrupt. But as this particular survey has also shown, even in the private sector, you also have a lot of corruption going on.
Right. So what are your recommendations, going by your findings?
I think if you
particularly for those of them here in Nigeria.
I think for me, the most important recommendation is the tone at the top. Everything an organization is doing will be driven by the tone at the top. Because you can have fantastic policies in place, like in the case of Nigeria, 94% of the respondents say that the organizations had anti-bribery and corruption policy, but to what extent has that policy been enforced? That is the key challenge. So if you have appropriate tone at the top, what it basically means is that people below the top management will be observing what the top management is doing. They are looking at the body language. The top management is walking the talk, not just doing the talking, okay? Because, as I said before, it is what the top management does that will influence what the people at the middle level will do, what the people at the lower level will do. So it's not all about having fantastic policies in place. I've come across many organizations that have fantastic policies in place, but by the time I did field testing, out of 5 branches that I picked up, only the staff of one of the branches were aware of the existence of the policy in the first place, which means that that document is only as good as the paper it was written on.
All right. Now, this is the 13th edition.
Yeah.
So you've done it 13 times?
At the global level, yes.
At the global levels. Now, in all of this survey, is it just about doing it? What do you eventually do with it? How does it really help in solving some of the problems you find out? And how does it help in policy formulation?
Okay, one of the things we try to achieve when we do the survey is to look at, okay, what are the emerging risks in the area of fraud, in the area of bribery, in the area of corruption, and bring this out to the attention of the respondents or the target audience. Like in this particular survey, one of the areas that we identify as an emerging major fraud risk is cybercrime. And interestingly, about half of the respondents did not know that cybercrime was a major issue. Many of them felt that it was not a risk issue in our business, but guess what? It is. And if you look at Nigeria, for instance, as an example, in the next few days, the whole country is going cashless. And I can tell that it will be a field day for all these cybercrime criminals.
So we all have to be aware.
That's what it basically means.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Linus Okeke. Well,
Thank you very much.
We've been looking at the Ernst & Young's Global Fraud Survey. It's actually the 13th edition, and I've been speaking with the Forensic Investigation and Dispute Services leader of West Africa of Ernst & Young, Mr. Linus Okeke. Well, it's on that note that we'll say thank you for being part of this program. Do remember to join us again, same time next week. And I can say, thank God it's Friday. Have a beautiful day.